Chapter 5 Warm-Up. The Algebra 1 Exponent Review. Our essential question: how do you use properties of exponents? There are several properties of exponents, and we're going to review each one individually. Our first property is simplifying expressions with zero and negative exponents. I observe that if I have a negative exponent, here is my negative exponent, that it is no longer up in the numerator, it has come down to the denominator instead. So I see that the 36 is raised to a negative 1/2. Since this is in the numerator, and I see that the exponent is a negative, that meant the 36 needs to move to the other side of the fraction, which would have ended up being the denominator, and our exponent now turns positive. And then you had to completely solve the problem. For zero exponents, anything raised to the 0 power equals 1. So we have our first two rows. So let's look at this problem real fast. This exponent of a 3 is only touching the d. It only affects the d. This exponent of a 3 has no effect on the c that is over here. That's why I circle it, to help us identify. 5 to the 0 power, according to the zero exponent rule, is 1. I see that I have 5 being raised to the negative 1 power. The 5 is currently in the numerator. So here is my fraction bar. If it's currently in the numerator with a negative exponent, that means that it needs to change to the denominator, and the exponent can now turn positive. However, now my numerator is empty. You cannot leave your numerator empty, so it has that secret ninja 1. And now I need to simplify my answer. The numerator is a 1. There is no math to do. It is already a 1. My denominator is 5 to the first power, and I need to simplify. 5 to the first power is 5. So my answer is the fraction 1/5. My next problem, I see the number 5 is being raised to a negative exponent. Since it's currently in the numerator, it needs to move to the denominator. As soon as it moves to the correct location, the exponent turns positive. My numerator is now empty. I need to make sure that I fill it with the 1. Simplifying, this is 1 all over. 5 to the second power in the denominator makes my denominator 25, because 5 times 5 is 25. Let's go ahead and do it with variables. I observe that the c is the only variable that has a negative exponent. Nobody else has a negative exponent. So here's my fraction bar. The c is the only thing affected by a negative exponent, which means the c is the only thing that's going to be moving. The b did not have a negative exponent, so the b is going to stay where it was. The d does not have a negative exponent, so the d is going to stay where it was. The c is the only variable with a negative exponent. It's currently in the denominator. That means it doesn't belong in the denominator. So it moves to the other side, which would be the numerator, and then the exponent then turns positive. We need to make sure that this is in fully simplified form. The numerator, I see that I have 2 variables. The variables need to be in alphabetical order. B, C, they are. My denominator, there's only 1 variable, so we are completely simplified, and we're done. Let's go ahead and do the next problem down here. I see that I have z to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power is 1. So my new fraction is 5x to the negative 2, y to the negative 3, all over 1. I now observe that not only is the x have a negative exponent, but my y also has a negative exponent. So we need to go ahead and rewrite our fraction. So here's my fraction bar. The 5 did not have a negative exponent. That 5 is not immediately touching this negative 2. The negative 2 is only immediately touching the x, so only the x is affected. 5 is not, so the 5 stays where it was. The 1 also did not have a negative exponent, so it stays where it is. The x, currently in the numerator, had a negative exponent, which means it doesn't belong in the numerator. It needs to go to the denominator, so we're being multiplied by, here's x to the positive 2, because when it moves to the other side, it gets a positive exponent. The y also has a negative exponent. It's currently in the numerator. It needs to move to the denominator, and it's being multiplied by y to the 3rd. So now we just need to simplify our fraction. The numerator only has a 5, so my numerator is a 5. My denominator, I have 1 times x squared times y to the 3rd. It's supposed to be in alphabetical order, and I multiplied all coefficients together, so my answer is x squared y to the third. And this is my simplified answer. Let's go ahead and do our next one. This is one of the reasons why I use my color pencil. This exponent is only immediately touching the 3. This exponent has no bearing on this negative sign out here. This problem is completely different than this one. The negative exponent is touching the entire parenthesis, which means the entire parenthesis is on the wrong side. If the negative is going to be included with the negative exponent, then it needs to be inside of a parenthesis, not on the outside of it. So what do I actually have? I have that negative sign that was not being affected by that exponent. The 3 is on the wrong side. It's currently in the numerator, which means it needs to go to the denominator, and when it moves, we get a positive exponent. My numerator is now empty. It needs to have the secret ninja 1. So I end up having a negative 1 all over. I need to do 3 to the 4th power. 3 to the 4th power is 81. So my answer is a negative 1 all over 81. Now remember, that is completely different than this problem here. So I have a parenthesis that's on the wrong side of the fraction. Use my fraction bar. It's currently in the numerator. It doesn't belong in the numerator. The entire parenthesis needs to move to the denominator, and when it moves to the denominator, the exponent turns positive. The number is going to stay the same. The exponent is the only item that ends up changing. The negative exponent tells you it's on the wrong side of the fraction. Now that it has moved to the other side, which is the correct side, the exponent turned positive. The numerator is a 1. So now I just need to simplify. I have the entire quantity of negative 3 raised to the 4th power. The entire quantity of negative 3 raised to the 4th power is 81. So my answer is 1 all over 81. Our very last problem. I see that the 2 is connected to the negative exponent, which means the 2 is on the wrong side. So here is my fraction bar. It's currently in the numerator where it shouldn't be. It's going to move to the other side, which is the denominator, and when it moves, my exponent turns positive. My numerator is now a 1. I need to simplify my fraction. So I have 1 all over. 2 to the 3rd power is 8. So my answer is 1 over 8. I am going to do 3 more problems with you. First thing I do is I look for 0 exponents. I see a to the 0, and that is supposed to be 1. So what do I have? I have 1b to the negative 2nd power all over c to the negative 3rd d. Now I look for negative exponents. The b is the only thing being affected by that negative 2 exponent. It's immediately touching. It's not touching the 1. This negative 3 is only immediately touching the c. So only the b and the c are going to change locations. So here is my fraction bar. The 1 is staying where it is in the top. The d is staying where they are in the bottom. Why did these two stay? Because neither of them had an exponent that was negative. The b is currently in the numerator. That negative exponent says he's on the wrong side, so we are going to move him to the other side, and when he moves to the other side, his exponent turns positive. The c is in the denominator, which is the wrong side. So the negative exponent says, move me to the other side. The other side is the numerator. So when I move him to the numerator, his exponent turns positive. Now we need to simplify our fraction. 1 times c to the 3rd is c to the 3rd. D times b squared, it's supposed to go alphabetical. So this is b squared d. And this is our simplified fraction. Our next problem. I do not see any 0 exponents, but I do see negative exponents. The p is raised to a negative 9, the q is raised to a negative 4, and the s is raised to a negative 3. That means the p, the q, and the s are all on the wrong sides of the fraction. So here is my fraction bar. The r is the only thing not raised to a negative. So the r is the only thing that's going to stay exactly where it was. The p needed to move. It was in the numerator. It is now going to be in the denominator. Exponent turns positive. Q needs to move. He was in the numerator. He's going to move to the denominator, and then his exponent turns positive. S needs to move. He was in the denominator. He is now in the numerator, and his exponent is going to turn positive. So now we just need to simplify our fraction. S to the third is the only thing in the numerator, so S to the third is already simplified. We have R being multiplied to P's being multiplied to Q's. It needs to be in alphabetical order. So P's, then Q's, then R's. So PQR. And this is our simplified fraction, and we're done. Our very last one. There are no zero exponents. We do have a negative exponent, however. The negative 3 is only immediately touching the R, and it has no effect on the 10. If that negative 3 were to affect the 10, that means all of this would have had to be in a parenthesis. So here is my fraction. The 10 is not moving. It does not have a negative exponent, so it stays exactly where it was in the numerator. The S is not moving. It did not have a negative exponent, so it's going to stay exactly where it was in the numerator. The R has a negative exponent, which means it's moving. It's currently in the numerator, and it needs to move to the other side, which would have been the denominator. So now we just need to simplify our fraction. 10 times s to the fourth is 10s to the fourth, all over r to the third. And this is our simplified fraction, and we're done. There are 9 problems left on the page. Please do these 9 problems for independent practice.